What if you could hear the final thoughts of everyone about to die? One crash. One voice. One chance to change fate. Elena Carter's gift is terrifying, impossible, and unstoppable. But when the voices start speaking to the living, can she save them all without losing herself? If you felt your heart racing with Elena's journey, don't let the story end here. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to follow every heartbeat of this epic tale. Share this with someone who loves thrilling, emotional stories, because some voices are meant to be heard. The rain had fallen without mercy over Mulholland Drive, smearing the world into blurred streaks of light and shadow. Elena Carter barely remembered turning the steering wheel. She remembered the scream of her tires as they slipped on wet asphalt, the sudden flash of a headlight coming too close, too fast, and then, nothing. Except silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the gentle kind. But the kind that presses against the chest like heavy hands. When Elena woke up, the sterile scent of antiseptic attacked her senses. White light stabbed into her tired eyes as she struggled to lift her head. Her body ached as if every bone had been shattered and carefully glued back together. The rhythmic beep of a machine echoed beside her, reminding her she was still alive, or at least, that her heart was still trying. Sunset Boulevard General Hospital, a nurse said softly when Elena tried to speak. You're lucky to be here, Ms. Carter. Most people don't survive that stretch of Mulholland in the rain. Survive. The word felt foreign. Unbelievable. As the nurse stepped away, a strange chill brushed Elena's skin. Then, in the deep corners of her mind, she heard it. I should have called them. I should have said goodbye. It wasn't her voice. It was a man's, trembling, distant, like it was being whispered into her soul from miles away. Her heart raced. The monitors beside her spiked wildly. Who said that? She gasped into the empty room. There was no one. Then, another voice faded in, a woman's this time, soft, desperate. Please, someone find my little boy. Elena pressed her hands to her ears, but the whispers were not in the room. They were inside her. And somewhere, far away in the city, a siren began to scream. Why is Elena hearing the last thoughts of strangers before they die? And why did the voices begin only after the crash? By the third hour, Elena realized the whispers were not hallucinations. They came like fading echoes of other worlds, brushing her consciousness like strangers passing in a dark hallway. A man in Chicago, his last thought wrapped in guilt. I promised I'd be home tonight. A trembling nurse in Dallas, her breath shallow. Don't let me die alone. A teenager in Seattle, tears hidden behind silence. Mom, I'm sorry for everything. And just as the voice dissolved, Elena's phone, returned to her by the hospital staff, lit up with breaking news alerts. Fatal crash. Shooting. Overdose. Fire. Each whisper connected to a reported death. Her hands began to shake. I can hear them, she told the doctor later, her voice low, afraid to sound insane. I can hear people right before they die. The doctor exchanged a worried glance with the nurse. Trauma can cause vivid auditory hallucinations, Elena. Your mind is trying to make sense of what happened. No, she whispered. These aren't memories. They are happening right now. As night fell, the room darkened except for the quiet glow of city lights leaking through the window. The beeping heart monitor became unbearable, like a metronome counting down something invisible. Then the clearest voice yet filled her mind. Slower. Stronger. Almost familiar. Find the quiet place by the water, before it's too late. A name followed. New Orleans. Elena sat up in bed, heart pounding against her ribs as if it were trying to escape. How could I know that city? She whispered to herself. Outside the hospital window, the rain began again, harder now, like a warning. And suddenly, everything went silent. No whispers. No beeping. No breath. The machine beside her went flat. Had Elena just heard another death? Or was it her own heartbeat that stopped? The panic in the hospital room erupted like thunder. Nurses rushed in. Alarms shattered the air. Hands grabbed Elena's shoulders, pressed against her chest, shocking her back into the present with brutal urgency. Her heart slammed to life again, violent and wild, like a drum calling her back from the edge of something she couldn't see. She flatlined for 3 seconds, someone said behind her. 3 seconds. 3 seconds of infinite silence. In that moment of emptiness, she had felt it. Not fear, not pain, but clarity, like hovering between 2 doors. One marked life, the other marked unknown. And the voices. They weren't there. For the first time since the accident, the inside of her mind was quiet. But the silence didn't comfort her. It terrified her. Later that night, when the hospital finally calmed, Elena stood by the window, watching the blurred glow of Los Angeles traffic crawling like distant fireflies beneath the overpass. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. Familiar, but changed. Her eyes looked deeper somehow, as if they had seen too much. She replayed the voice in her mind. Find the quiet place by the water. New Orleans wasn't a memory. It was a call. A summons. By morning, Elena signed her own discharge papers despite the doctor's strong warnings. Her body was bruised, her mind shattered, but something inside her felt pulled, like a compass aligning to hidden north. She left the hospital carrying nothing but her phone, a jacket, and the weight of the dead resting quietly in her thoughts. At the Los Angeles airport, she bought a single ticket. Destination: New Orleans. As she waited to board, a new whisper pierced her. You are being watched. This time, it wasn't fading. It was close. Too close. Elena slowly lifted her eyes. Across the waiting lounge, a tall man in a dark coat was staring directly at her. He was not blinking. Not smiling. Just waiting. Like he had been expecting her all along. Who is the man watching Elena? And does he know about the voices too? New Orleans did not feel like a city. It felt like a memory that refused to die. As Elena stepped out of the airport, warm air wrapped around her skin like a damp hand. The sky was painted in shades of purple and gold, and the streets pulsed with music that seemed to come from the pavement itself. Somewhere a trumpet cried. Somewhere a drum answered. Life and death walked side by side here, as if they had never been enemies. But tonight, the music could not drown out the voices inside her. They had returned on the plane, softer now, but layered, like a choir of fading souls. Each whisper clung to a different kind of pain, regret over words never spoken, love left unfinished, apologies trapped in silent hearts. She pressed her hand over her chest as she walked past wrought iron balconies covered in ivy and thyme. The quarter glowed under orange lantern light, but shadows crept where light refused to touch. The quiet place by the water. The voice returned, clearer now than it had ever been. Elena's feet moved without her deciding. She followed the dark river road until the sounds of the city faded into wind and rustling leaves. The Mississippi River stretched out before her, black and endless, its surface swallowing every reflection. There, in the silence between lapping water and night air, stood a man. He looked to be in his early 40s, broad-shouldered, with tired eyes that reflected 1,000 unread stories. He did not look surprised to see her. I was wondering when you would come, he said calmly. Elena froze. Do I know you? No, he replied. But the dead know you now. Her breath caught in her throat. Who are you? The man stepped closer to the water. The moonlight touched his face like memory returning to flesh. My name is Dr. Marcus Hale. And you, Elena Carter, are standing on the edge of a world that does not forgive curiosity. The river behind him suddenly went still. Then, a whisper burst into her mind, louder than ever before. He cannot be trusted. Is Marcus Hale here to save Elena, or silence her forever? For a long moment, Elena said nothing. The air shivered around them like waiting breath. Her heartbeat pulsed inside her ears, louder than the distant city music. You've been hearing them, Marcus said quietly. The ones who are about to cross over. Elena's eyes widened. You have no right to say that like it's normal. Like it's just science. Marcus gave a humorless smile. It isn't science. Not fully. It's the space where science is too afraid to look. He knelt by the edge of the river, letting the dark water slide across his palm. I used to be a neurologist. Studied the brain, consciousness, near-death experiences. I thought I was mapping the human mind, but I was really mapping the edge of the afterlife. How do you know about me? She demanded. I don't know about you, he answered. I know about what you have become. And that kind of awakening sends a signal. A ripple. You felt it on Mulholland Drive, didn't you? She swallowed hard. The memory flashed, tires screaming, headlights exploding, then infinite silence. You died for a moment, Elena, Marcus said. And in those few seconds, something held the door open. A wave of cold rolled down her spine. That's impossible. No, he whispered. It's rare. And dangerous. The air around them grew heavy, charged as though a storm gathered not in the sky, but in the space between their bodies. You are hearing final thoughts because your soul now sits closer to the veil than the rest of the living world. You are walking a line that only very few ever touch. Then tell me how to stop it, Elena said, desperate. Tell me how to make the voices go away. Marcus stood again, staring directly into her eyes. You don't, he replied. Eventually, you learn to listen. At that exact moment, Elena collapsed to her knees. A voice slammed into her mind, unlike the others, not fading, not distant. Panicked. Terrified. Personal. Please, she can still be saved. Elena gasped. Saved from what? Marcus's face drained of color. From you, he said. Is Elena becoming a threat to the living? Who is about to die? And is it her fault? The whisper did not fade. It hung in the air, vibrating inside Elena's skull like a warning bell. She pressed her palms to her temples, collapsing on the damp ground near the river as the image behind the voice slowly began to form. A vision that was not hers, yet painfully clear. A young girl. No more than 16. Sitting on the edge of an old wooden dock. Tears falling into dark water. Phone in her hand. No one around. The sky heavy with storm clouds. Not supposed to die. Elena stood up suddenly. Her heart hammered with purpose. Where is she? She demanded. Whose voice was that? Marcus looked shaken, something rare crossing his usually composed expression. That wasn't a dying voice. It was a warning thought. It came from someone trying to fight fate. Then we can change it. Elena cried. We can find her. Marcus grabbed her wrist. Be careful what you interfere with. Some deaths are fixed points. If you break the wrong one, the correction is never gentle. Lightning cracked in the distance over the river. Thunder answered like a god clearing his throat. I don't care, Elena snapped. I was given this ability for a reason. For the first time, Marcus looked at her not as a case study, but as a force. They raced through winding streets until Elena recognized the very dock from her vision, a forgotten pier hidden along the outer stretch of the river bank. And there she was. The girl. Alive. Crying. Shaking. Don't move, Elena shouted, sprinting toward her just as the storm unleashed its full fury, rain and thunder blazing across the river. The girl turned in shock, slipping on the wet wood, her body tilting backward over the black water below. Time stretched thin. Elena lunged. Their hands met. Lightning struck the river with blinding light. And suddenly, in Elena's mind, she heard the clearest voice of all. Not a stranger. Not a dying soul. Her own. This is where it was meant to end. The universe seemed to pause on her breath. Will Elena save the girl, or is she defying a moment the world itself has already written? The voice came just before dawn, rough and weathered, coated in dust and forgotten wars. Not like this again. Elena bolted upright in her New Orleans guest room, her heart slamming like a fist against her ribs. Sweat clung to her back as if she had just run miles in a desert she didn't remember stepping into. But she felt it, the thick heat, the scent of burning rubber, the echo of distant gunfire. It wasn't memory. It wasn't imagination. It was him. A man in Dallas. A veteran. His thoughts flooded into her, sand in his boots, the weight of a rifle, a name whispered like a prayer, Michael. The vision sharpened, and suddenly she was in a cluttered trailer on the outskirts of the city, walls lined with faded flags and framed photographs of men who never aged past 20. He sat at a kitchen table, hands trembling over a cup of cold coffee. Outside, sirens wailed, faint but growing louder. I made it home. So why don't I feel safe, he thought. Elena's chest constricted. She had 10 minutes, maybe less. She grabbed her phone and called the local Dallas emergency line, her voice shaking as she tried to explain what she knew without knowing how she knew it. There's a veteran in danger. Retired staff sergeant. He's in a trailer near East Ledbetter Drive. Please, just send someone. Silence. Then a hesitant acknowledgement. In the vision, the man stood. He walked toward the door. Outside, a shadow moved by his window. Michael's not here, his final thought murmured. Only the ghosts are. The voice cut off like a heartbeat stopping. Seconds later, Elena's phone buzzed. Breaking news. Local veteran found dead in apparent home intrusion. Suspect unknown. Her knees buckled. She had tried. She had called. But she was too late. And the whispers. They were already returning. Rain poured in her mind, endless, cold, merciless. This time the voice was softer, younger, fragile, like glass about to shatter. I'm sorry, Mama. I won't hurt you again. Elena found herself standing on a bridge in Seattle, though her real body hadn't left New Orleans. The gray sky split open, drenching the girl's thin frame as she leaned over the railing. Below her, the dark river twisted like a living thing hungry for her pain. She was 17. Her name was Abigail. Elena knew it before she ever heard it spoken. Her thoughts spilled into Elena's soul. Years of feeling invisible, misunderstood, unloved. A recent argument. A slammed door. A silence too heavy for such a young heart to carry. They'd be happier without me, the girl believed. No. Elena whispered aloud in her room, gripping the edge of the bed as if she could hold on to the girl from miles away. Abigail, please. But she wasn't talking to Abigail. She was listening to her final truth. Rain beat against the invisible reality. Cars drove past, unaware. Life went on like it always did, cruel in its normality. Abigail climbed onto the railing. And for one impossible second, Abigail heard another voice. You matter. The girl paused. Elena's breath caught. Did she hear me? Did her mind, somewhere in the universe, feel Elena's desperate thought? Sirens sounded in the distance. Not too far this time. But were they early enough? Abigail turned. Red lights reflected in her teary eyes. A hand reached for her from behind as Elena's world went silent. The whisper did not return. You're breaking the natural order. Dr. Marcus Hale's words echoed through the candlelit study, the walls cluttered with ancient texts, medical journals, and worn notebooks filled with handwritten observations on near-death consciousness. Elena stared at him, eyes darkened by sleepless nights and borrowed last breaths. I didn't choose this, she replied. It chose me. You are stepping into the space between fate and free will, Elena, he said gently. And that space is sacred. He explained what he suspected, that the crash on Mulholland Drive hadn't just cracked her skull, it had cracked a door. A door between those still breathing and those slipping away. She was walking in the silence between heartbeats. Every time you interfere, Marcus continued, you pull on threads that connect thousands of others. You may save one life, but cause 10 tragedies you'll never hear. The silence after his words felt heavier than the whispers. But what about Abigail? Elena asked. What if she's still alive? Marcus hesitated. My research suggests, sometimes, the strongest emotions can echo back. Love, fear, regret. But you cannot cling to every echo, or you'll lose yourself. As if summoned, a new voice sliced into Elena's head like broken glass. The bridge. Tonight. In Brooklyn. A man's voice. Familiar. Too familiar. New York. Elena gasped. Someone is going to die on the Brooklyn Bridge tonight. Marcus's eyes widened. How do you know? Because the voice. Her face went pale. It sounded like me. Storm clouds gathered over the Brooklyn Bridge as Elena stepped onto its wooden path, her coat whipping violently in the icy wind. The city roared below, uncaring, alive, vibrant, everything she feared and everything she loved at once. Her heart pounded with an unnatural rhythm now, as though it was syncing with something unseen. The voice returned. You shouldn't have come. It was her voice. Older. Tired. Full of sorrow. I'm here, she whispered into the night. I'm here now. Her mind split into two realities. In one, she stood alone, gripping the railing, watching traffic blur into streaks of white and red beneath the storm. In the other, she saw herself standing 10 feet away on the same bridge. Same coat. Same face. Same haunted eyes. I tried to save them, her other self said. Rain passed through her like smoke. But no one saves the listener. Am I going to die tonight? Elena asked. The other her gave a sad smile. Not unless you choose silence. Thunder cracked the sky open. Footsteps approached behind her. Slow, deliberate, dangerous. A stranger's silhouette emerged from the darkness, holding something metallic that caught the city lights. Lady, the man called out, voice trembling. Don't turn around. Elena closed her eyes as the same whisper she once received from thousands now escaped her lips. Not like this again. And the world held its breath. The metallic glint in the stranger's trembling hand wasn't a knife. It was a gun. Rain slid down the barrel as if even the storm feared touching it. Elena stood frozen, her breath shallow, her heart beating so loudly it drowned out the honking traffic and the distant rumble of thunder. Behind her, the ghost of herself faded like fog, leaving only one truth behind. This moment is real. Don't move, the man pleaded, his voice cracked wide open with panic and despair. I can't do this alone. If I'm going to do it, I need someone to see me. Elena slowly turned. His eyes were hollow, red-rimmed, carrying the same weight she had felt in countless dying minds. He wasn't there to kill her. He was there to be seen before disappearing forever. You don't want to shoot me, Elena said calmly, though fear clawed inside her. You just want the noise to stop. His grip wavered. Her ability flared suddenly, and she heard him. His thoughts. A lost business. A sick wife. A drowning mountain of debt. And beneath it all, one desperate scream. I failed them. Sirens echoed closer. Police somewhere. But time was running out. If you pull that trigger, Elena said, stepping closer to the barrel, you take my voice and yours forever. But if you don't, you break the silence. You rewrite the echo. Tears streaked down his face. The gun lowered. In that same second, Elena's head exploded with new whispers. Not one, not two, but a chorus. Dozens of voices crying out at once from different corners of the world. She dropped to her knees on the bridge. The power was growing. And it was no longer under her control. The hospital lights flickered as Elena lay on a gurney, convulsing while doctors rushed around her blurred vision. To them, she was just another young woman in shock. To her, she was a battlefield. A choir of final heartbeats flooded her, a bus driver in Phoenix, a woman in Baltimore, a child in Atlanta, a man praying silently in a church in Tennessee. Every whisper clawed at her like invisible hands. Make it stop. But the voices only grew louder. One stuck out among the rest. Strong. Familiar. Achingly warm. Her mother. Elena. Baby. I love you. Her eyes flew open. My mom, she gasped, grabbing the doctor's sleeve. Where is she? What happened to my mom? But her mother was safe. Miles away. Still alive. Which meant only one thing. The voices were no longer just the dying. They were becoming the living. And that meant Elena wasn't standing between life and death anymore. She was standing between every heartbeat on Earth. Dr. Marcus Hale arrived, his face tight with terror as the machines around her screamed in alarm. This is more than near-death consciousness, he whispered to himself. She's becoming an open channel. He leaned down to her ear. Elena, listen to me very carefully. The only way to stop this is to close the door that was opened on Mulholland Drive. Her body trembled. And how, she whispered, do I do that? He looked into her eyes like a grieving man. You have to return to the place where you were supposed to die. The road twisted through the Los Angeles hills like a scar that never healed. Mulholland Drive. Even in daylight, it felt haunted. Elena stepped out of the car and onto the cold pavement where twisted metal and shattered glass had once surrounded her broken body. The wind whispered through the trees, and the city below sparkled with millions of unaware heartbeats. This was where time had split. This was where she had heard everything for the first time. You should have died here, the wind seemed to say. Dr. Hale stood a few feet away, nervously gripping a small recorder. If my theory is right, he said, this place is your doorway. Standing here might close it. And if your theory is wrong? Elena replied. Then your mind won't survive what comes next. She stepped forward anyway. The moment her foot crossed the exact spot of impact, the world dissolved. She saw flashes of every soul she had ever heard. Thousands of faces, thousands of final thoughts, all staring at her as if she were their judge. You heard us, they whispered together. Now it is your turn to speak. Her heart pounded painfully. And for the first time since the accident, it began to slow. The air grew so still that even the birds stopped singing. Elena stood suspended in a limbo unseen by the living, surrounded by glowing silhouettes shaped like human memories. You cannot carry every ending, a woman's voice said. But you can choose your own, said another. Two paths appeared before her. One flooded with endless whispers, a life of knowing every final moment, every heartbreak, every tragedy. The other, completely silent, peaceful, still, empty. If I choose silence, Elena asked, will they all die without being heard? No, the voices replied. They will be heard by the ones who love them. As it was always meant to be. Tears streamed down her face. I just wanted to save them. You did, the voices answered. You saved them by listening. Her hands shook as she stepped toward the path of silence. Her heartbeat faded, then stopped. Dr. Hale screamed her name in the distance. And the entire world fell quiet. Elena woke up gasping. Sunlight filtered through white curtains. Beeping machines. A calm, steady rhythm. One single heartbeat. Her own. Dr. Hale stood beside her bed, tears in his eyes, smiling through disbelief. You've been unconscious for 2 days, he said. We almost lost you. She searched inside her mind. No whispers. No voices. Only silence. For the first time in her life, the silence felt beautiful. What happens now? She whispered. Now, he said softly. You live. Outside the window, the city moved on, full of love, pain, chaos, and miracles she would no longer hear in advance. But somewhere, on a bridge in New York, in a trailer in Dallas, under Seattle rain, lives continued. Because she had listened. And now, she had finally learned how to let go. But suddenly, a new sound broke the silence. A faint, familiar whisper. Thank you. Elena froze. Her pulse spiked. Dr. Hale looked at her in concern. "What's wrong?" he asked. Slowly, she turned her eyes toward the window. "It's starting again." The voice did not come like the others. It did not rush like a wave or claw its way into Elena's skull like a scream in a storm. It was soft, intimate. It felt close enough to be sitting beside her on the edge of the hospital bed. Warm. Familiar. "Thank you." Elena froze. The word echoed through the quiet room long after it vanished. Her fingers clenched the thin white blanket as her heart began to hammer erratically against her ribs. But there were no more whispers following it. No chorus. No chaos. Just a vacuum where her gift once lived and a single question hanging in the air like dust in sunlight. "Did you hear that?" she asked. Dr. Hale straightened from the chair by her bed. His tired eyes searched her face. "Hear what?" "My name wasn't said, but I felt it. Someone thanked me." Her voice wavered. Her mind reached outward, testing the edge of consciousness, bracing for the familiar collapse of voices. But there was only stillness. Marcus exhaled slowly. Maybe it was a memory. A fragment trying to resolve itself. Trauma does strange things after an experience like yours. But Elena knew the difference between a memory and a whisper. She had felt this one. It was not from the dying. It was from someone who had lived. Someone whose fate had turned in a new direction because of her presence on that bridge, because of her words, because she had chosen to speak instead of remain silent. "Then something has changed," she whispered, staring out the window as New York bloomed below in endless motion and heartbeat. "It's not the dying anymore. It's the ones who survive." Marcus frowned. "That's impossible." "Maybe," she countered. "This was never about death at all." Outside, the world looked normal again. People walked. Lovers argued. Children laughed. Cars honked. Life was ordinary. But Elena felt the edge of an unseen truth wrapping itself around her once more. And she feared what name the next whisper might speak. The next voice came in broad daylight. Not as whispers in her mind, but through a real phone. An unknown number. She stared at her screen, knowing somehow before answering, that her life had shifted again. "Hello," she said cautiously. A shaky breath came through the line. Then, a soft, emotional voice. "You don't know me, but you saved me." Her heart dropped. "I was on the Brooklyn Bridge that night. You spoke to me before anyone else did. I was going to jump." His words moved like slow thunder through her chest. "You said I mattered. And I don't even think you realized it. But I heard you inside my head before you said anything out loud. Ever since then, I keep hearing your name in the silence. It led me here, to this number, this phone." "Where are you right now?" she asked, barely breathing. "Chicago." A cold feeling crawled up her spine. "I keep hearing your heartbeat even from here," he continued. "And I don't think it's just gratitude. I think we are connected by what didn't happen." Police sirens wailed in the background of his call. "Listen," he said urgently. "There's someone else here who isn't supposed to survive tonight. I can feel it the same way you felt me. That's why I called you." Her world tilted. "You mean," she swallowed, "you hear them now too?" "Yes," he whispered. "And it's getting louder." The line went dead. And a second later, Elena heard the whisper again in her own mind, but it didn't belong to him this time. It belonged to a woman crying somewhere in Chicago. "Tell my daughter. I tried." "There are more of you now," Marcus said grimly as Elena relayed the call. "That means it isn't a door. It isn't a curse. It's a contagion of consciousness, one soul passing awareness to another." "Or a chain," Elena replied. "One heart waking up the next." Another whisper formed. Then another. Faint. Distant. Not thousands like before, but several. All scattered. All in danger. Cities bloomed inside her awareness like burning stars. Detroit. Atlanta. San Diego. Omaha. New listeners were being born. People she had never met were now becoming what she had once been. I was the first, she realized. The impact didn't just open my mind, it tuned my heart to a frequency that transferred to others when I changed their fate. You're starting a generation of listeners, Marcus said. Or creating a generation of tortured souls, she countered. Outside, thunder gathered over the city as if echoing her fear. What if we aren't meant to hear this? She whispered. What if humans were never supposed to know the moment before a life disappears? A powerful new voice slammed into her. Clear. Strong. Terrifying. It felt familiar. Too familiar. Elena, listen to me carefully. It was her sister's voice. And she was nowhere near New York. Elena dropped her phone. No, 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 she whispered as her sister's emotions flooded in. Fear, darkness, wet pavement, headlights too close, breath coming in sharp gasps. Rachel. Where are you? Elena cried aloud, even though Rachel couldn't hear her outside of thought. Marcus's face went pale. You said family never came through before. They don't, Elena shook her head, dark curls clinging to her face. They can't, unless. A realization sliced through her. Unless they are part of my echo now. Because my future changed. Their fate shifted too. Rachel's thoughts sharpened. Under the bridge in Baton Rouge. Man with a black jacket. I shouldn't have taken this road. Elena grabbed her phone, dialing wildly, hands shaking so badly she almost couldn't hit the screen. Rachel, answer me. 1 ring. 2. 3. A quiet pickup. Elena. Her sister's voice trembled in real time. Get out of your car. Get to the light. Right now, she screamed. A man's shadow crossed behind Rachel. Then a gasp. Run, Elena whispered. The call cut out. And the silence returned once more. But this time, it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like blood soaking into earth. News arrived 2 hours later. Attempted abduction. Baton Rouge. Woman survived by abandoning vehicle and reaching a nearby store. Suspect escaped. Elena collapsed to the floor, sobbing, not in grief this time, but in a flood of impossible relief. She lived, she whispered into the emptiness. She lived. Marcus knelt beside her. You changed the chain again. And now it's bound to me, Elena said quietly, wiping tears. Everyone I save becomes a new listener. Everyone connected to me becomes a possible final voice. Then we must understand the pattern, Marcus said. Because your ability has evolved from hearing death to interrupting it. And there is a balance to that, Elena replied, eyes burning with clarity. She stood slowly. Which means, if I can save a life before it ends, I can also be the reason one ends when it shouldn't. Outside, lightning cut the sky open like a warning from God. A final whisper drifted into her mind for the night. You're not here to listen anymore. A pause. You're here to decide. Elena looked toward the storm. And somewhere beyond the clouds, something was already deciding her back. Sleep did not come. Every time Elena closed her eyes, she saw the same image. A vast ocean made of human hearts, each one glowing faintly in the dark like a lantern drifting on black water. Some pulsed strong. Some flickered. Some were already sinking. And she was standing at the edge of the world, forced to decide which ones reached the shore and which ones would drown. She sat upright in the hotel bed as dawn cut a pale line through the curtains. Her chest felt too tight for her lungs. Her heartbeat was loud and slow, like a drum announcing war. You're not here to listen anymore. You're here to decide. The words clung to her like a curse. Marcus watched her from the other bed, his face hollow with exhaustion. He had witnessed the edge of science, the collapse of reason, and the birth of something ancient inside her. He was no longer a doctor speaking to a patient. He was a human being staring at a storm he didn't understand. You didn't choose this, he said softly. And you don't have to carry it alone. She shook her head. That's the thing. I am alone. No one else hears what I hear. No one else feels time split open like this. As if in response, a new ripple trembled in the silence between her heartbeats. Not a cry for help. A warning. Someone is coming for you. Her skin went cold. Marcus. Yes. There's a man hunting the listeners. The room felt suddenly too small, too fragile for whatever was closing in. Another voice, closer, darker, filled with certainty. She has interfered enough. They arrived in New Orleans by night, returning to the city where her journey had first twisted into the unreal. Fog hung over the Mississippi like breath frozen in time. Streetlights bled gold through the mist. Every sound was sharp. Every shadow looked like a decision someone else had already made. You said the voices led you here once, Marcus murmured as they walked along the river. Maybe this place is the center of it all. No, Elena replied quietly. It's where it started to make sense. A presence moved behind them. The air shifted, heavy, metallic. And then he spoke. You were never meant to survive Mulholland Drive. Elena turned. The man stood beneath a broken streetlight. Tall, clean-cut, empty eyes. His heartbeat was wrong. Too steady. Too silent. It sounded like a clock instead of life. You don't hear them the way she does, Marcus said, standing between them. No, the man replied. I end them. That is balance. Elena's blood went ice-cold. You're a listener, she whispered, realization creeping in. But you chose the opposite side of the heartbeat. There must be endings, he said. And you have delayed too many. His mind did not scream. It was perfectly calm. That terrified her more than all the others combined. I'm not killing anyone, she said. You don't have to, he replied. Your interference ripples outward. You give people time that was never written for them. A whisper brushed against her consciousness. Not from the dying. From the future. If he reaches Rachel, she will not survive. Her heart slammed violently in her chest. He smiled, as if he heard it too. And then he vanished into the fog. The next whisper was not a whisper. It was a vision. Elena stood in the middle of Times Square, surrounded by millions of beating hearts. Screens blazed. Lights screamed color. But no sounds came. No voices. Only silence pressing in from every direction as people froze, hands on chests, faces turned to the sky. Every heartbeat stopped. Except hers. And Rachel's. Her sister stood across the empty road, tears falling without movement. You weren't supposed to save me, Rachel mouthed, even though Elena could hear her clearly. For every life you pulled back, another must fall. The vision shattered. Elena collapsed to her knees, gasping. Marcus caught her. What did you see? The cost, she whispered. The universe is going to collect it. A new detail surfaced in her mind like blood rising to water. The date. September 11th. Not the past. The coming one. And this time, it was personal. Brooklyn Bridge again. Same cold metal rails. Same water below. Same where it had all turned once before. But this time, Elena was not trying to save a stranger. She was waiting for fate. Rachel stood beside her, arms wrapped around her own chest as the wind tried to tear warmth from her body. I don't understand, Rachel said through trembling teeth. You dragged me here in the middle of the night but won't tell me why. Elena looked out at the dark water. Because this is where the world tries to correct its own mistakes, she whispered. A figure stepped from the shadows. The man with the silent heartbeat. You knew I would come, he said calmly. Yes, Elena replied. Because you think ending one life can restore balance. And saving many destroys it, he countered. She turned fully to face him now. So take mine instead. Rachel gasped. No. If a life must be taken, let it be the one that disrupted the order. The man studied her. For the first time, something like respect crossed his expression. And if you're wrong? Elena's lips trembled. Then the world keeps beating without me in it. The gun in his hand wasn't shaking. It was peaceful. Final. Like the last breath of a dying star. Rachel cried out Elena's name as the world slowed. Slowed. And in that suspended moment, that sacred silence between heartbeats, Elena finally understood everything. All the voices she had ever heard were never asking her to save them. Only to feel them. To witness that they existed. To understand that every life, even in its final second, mattered. I am not afraid, she said softly. The man hesitated. Then that is why you must live, he whispered. He turned the gun on himself instead. The sound split the night in two. Silence followed. And then, the beating of the world returned. One by one. Cars. Wind. Breath. Life. Elena collapsed against Rachel, sobbing not from sorrow but from overwhelming, devastating, beautiful relief. The whispers were gone. Not because the door was closed, but because it was finally at peace. The silence between heartbeats no longer meant death. It meant life continuing forward, unspoken, but fully felt. Above the bridge, the sky began to lighten with the first hint of morning. And Elena Carter took the first true breath of a normal life. But in the far distance, a faint familiar voice echoed one last time. Now live it. Elena returned to New Orleans, the city now quiet under a golden morning sun. The Mississippi glimmered in soft light, and jazz floated lazily from an open cafe window. It should have felt normal. Safe. Yet she felt the weight of all she had carried. Memories returned in fragments. The Brooklyn Bridge, the whispers of strangers, her sister's terror, the man who almost ended her. Each echo reminded her of the fragility of life and the responsibility she had been given. Marcus approached her, a rare smile breaking across his exhausted face. You're alive. And free. Elena shook her head. Free, maybe. But I'll never forget. She walked along the river, watching children play and lovers argue, feeling the rhythm of lives that once had been whispering through her. Each heartbeat she had listened to had taught her a lesson. Love, regret, fear, hope, and courage, all woven into one fragile tapestry. A breeze brushed past her, carrying a whisper she almost didn't hear. Thank you. Not a voice from the dead. Not a warning. Just gratitude. Elena smiled through tears. The silence had finally become something she could cherish, not fear. Life was still loud, still messy, but she could breathe. And for the first time, she could simply be part of it without feeling the weight of every ending. Weeks later, Elena visited Chicago, where the first ripple of her gift had awakened another listener. She wandered the streets, observing people lost in their routines, their private joys and sorrows. She imagined all the whispers she had heard, the veteran, the teenager, the mother, and smiled quietly. She felt connected, yet untethered. She could no longer intervene, and that was okay. Sometimes, witnessing life was enough. She met one of the new listeners, a man who had been saved by her action. He was hesitant, confused, and amazed at the weight he had unknowingly inherited. They shared coffee by the river, each recognizing the fragile thread that tied them to lives unseen. Elena realized that her gift had not disappeared, it had changed. It wasn't a burden anymore. It was a lens through which she could appreciate the fleeting beauty of life without controlling it. And that made all the difference. At last, Elena returned home to Rachel. The sisters sat on the porch of their childhood house, the late afternoon sun spilling over their faces. No whispers, no urgent calls, just the quiet laughter of two souls who had survived. I was terrified for you, Rachel admitted, gripping Elena's hand. Every night, I imagined I'd lose you. And I was terrified for you, Elena replied softly. I learned that sometimes the best way to love someone is to let life happen around them, even when you want to hold them close. They watched the neighborhood kids chasing each other across the lawn, the world moving on in small, ordinary miracles. And for the first time, Elena felt that her gift, though quiet, had reshaped her heart permanently. She didn't need to hear every heartbeat, just to honor them. Back in New York, Marcus documented the final moments of her journey. The notebooks were no longer research. They were lessons, philosophies, and poems of life and death. Elena read them quietly in a small cafe, understanding that the true power of her gift wasn't to save lives by hearing them, but to live fully and witness fully. She imagined the whispers she would never hear again and smiled. The voices were still out there, part of the world's infinite rhythm. And now, she could hear her own heartbeat clearly, untangled from every echo. For the first time, she felt truly human, fragile, ephemeral, and radiant. Elena stood on the Brooklyn Bridge once more. The water below reflected the early morning sun, calm and glimmering. She closed her eyes and took a deep, steady breath. No whispers. No urgent calls. No shadows. Only her heartbeat. She thought of every soul she had listened to, saved, or watched depart. Every life mattered. Every heartbeat had been a teacher. Now live it, she whispered softly, remembering the last words that had carried her through darkness. She stepped forward, fully present, fully alive, letting the wind wrap around her like a promise. The silence between heartbeats was no longer terrifying. It was sacred. It was life. And as she walked into the morning light, Elena Carter finally understood what truly mattered. Courage, love, and the beauty of simply being here, now, alive. The world continued, chaotic, imperfect, breathtaking, and she was ready. Life is fragile, every heartbeat matters, and true courage is in embracing the present. We cannot control every ending, but we can choose to listen, to love, and to act with compassion while we still can.